March 15th, 44 BCE, the Ides of March. Inside Rome's Senate chamber, the air is thick with tension. Julius Caesar, ruler of Rome, enters, unaware of the betrayal that awaits him. He greets the senators, but among them are those who have sworn to end his rule. Then, a hand grabs his toga, a dagger flashes, and in moments, history is changed forever. Throughout history, betrayal has reshaped nations, rewritten destinies. Imagine a world where the trust between leaders and followers shattered, where a single act of treachery sparked revolutions and altered history forever. In this video, we dive deep into history's darkest betrayals, the plots, the conspiracies, the acts of treason that changed the world, from the stabbing of a mighty ruler to secret schemes that shook entire empires. We'll uncover some of the most shocking acts of treachery ever recorded. Julius Caesar's assassination, the Gunpowder plot, Benedict Arnold's infamous betrayal, and a few lesser-known acts of deception that prove treachery has no era, no borders, and no limits. Julius Caesar's assassination, the Senate floor, a place of power, of law, of order. But on this day, March 15th, 44 BCE, it became a battleground. Julius Caesar, Rome's most powerful man, entered, unsuspecting. The senators rose to greet him, smiling, welcoming. But behind those smiles, daggers. Then, a hand on his shoulder, a whisper, "For the Republic." And suddenly, steel, a flash of silver, a sharp, searing pain, one strike, then another, and another, 23 times, each blade, a promise, a betrayal. But it was the last face Caesar saw. That cut the deepest. Brutus. Not just a senator, not just a friend, but a man he trusted like a son. And with his final breath, Caesar spoke the words that would echo through history. Et tu, Brute? A question, a realization, and then silence. Julius Caesar was dead. Rome would never be the same. Caesar's body lay on the Senate floor. The greatest ruler of Rome, betrayed by those he trusted most. But betrayal does not end with a single act. It spreads, like fire, like disease. And in the years that followed, Rome burned. Civil war erupted. Brutus and Cassius, once hailed as defenders of the Republic, became fugitives, hunted, despised. Their dream of a restored republic shattered. Because in the ashes of Caesar's death, a new power rose. Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, his heir. The assassins believed they had saved Rome from a dictator. Instead, they had created an emperor. And Rome would never be a republic again. Brutus stood on the battlefield, the last light of day fading, the sound of war echoing in the distance. He had once dreamed of saving Rome. Now, he was its enemy. Octavian and Mark Antony's forces had crushed his army. There was no escape. Brutus turned to his closest ally. A single request: hold my sword. The man hesitated. Brutus took a breath. Then, he ran into the blade. His body collapsed to the ground. The man who had betrayed Caesar had now betrayed himself. As Brutus lay dying, his final words whispered into the wind. "Oh, Julius Caesar, be satisfied." England, 1603. Queen Elizabeth I is dead. And in her place, King James I. For English Catholics, hope flickers. For decades, they have suffered fines, arrests, executions. But James? They thought he might be different. And then, reality. He enforces the same brutal laws. A group of men can take no more. Among them, Robert Catesby, a man of conviction, of fury, and Guy Fawkes, a soldier, a zealot, a man willing to die for his faith. Their goal? To destroy the government, to wipe out King James and to restore a Catholic ruler, a single act to change England forever. And so, the Gunpowder Plot is born. England, 1605, a kingdom on edge. King James I sits on the throne, a Protestant king in a nation still divided. For decades, Catholics have suffered, persecuted, arrested, executed. Their faith treated as treason. And among them, a group of men who have had enough. They gather in secrecy. Their leader, Robert Catesby, a man with a plan to strike at the very heart of England. But they need more than just men. They need gunpowder. And for that, they need Guy Fawkes, a soldier, a mercenary, a man who knows explosives. The plan? Simple. Sneak into the cellars beneath Parliament, pack them with gunpowder, and on the day of the Grand Assembly, light the fuse. One spark, one explosion, and England's government gone in an instant. The date is set, November 5th, 1605. But, as history has shown, secrets rarely stay hidden. A letter, anonymous, untraceable, delivered to Lord Monteagle, a nobleman with ties to the king. Inside, a warning. Do not attend Parliament on November 5th. Monteagle reads it once, then again. His hands tremble. This is more than just a threat. It's a conspiracy. He rushes to Whitehall, straight to King James's advisors. The warning? Taken seriously. That very night, a search of Parliament's cellars begins. Torches flicker, boots echo against stone, and there, a lone figure, standing guard beside barrels of gunpowder, his name, Guy Fawkes, captured, interrogated, and soon tortured. For days he refuses to speak, but the rack is relentless. His body, broken, his will, shattered. And at last, he confesses. The plot is over, but the punishment has just begun. The plot had failed, but justice, it would be merciless, one by one. The conspirators were hunted down. Some fled, some fought, but none would escape their fate. In January 1606, Guy Fawkes and his fellow traitors stood trial. Their crime? High treason. Their sentence? Death. A public execution designed to send a message. The punishment? Hanging, drawing, quartering, a fate worse than death itself. On January 31st, Guy Fawkes was led to the scaffold. The crowd jeered. The noose tightened around his neck. But Fawkes, he had one final act of defiance. With a sudden leap, he jumped. The rope snapped his neck. Instant death. A quicker end than the king had intended. But the message? It remained. Treason would not be tolerated. The failed gunpowder plot would haunt England for centuries. To this day, on every November 5th, Britain remembers, bonfires burn, fireworks light up the sky, and one name still echoes through time, Guy Fawkes, the man who nearly changed history, but instead became a warning. At the start, Benedict Arnold was a patriot, a war hero, a man willing to die for American freedom. He fought bravely in battle. He bled for the cause. But beneath the surface, resentment grew. Arnold was passed over for promotions, accused of corruption, humiliated. Despite his sacrifices, he felt unappreciated. Over time, his loyalty began to waver, and soon, that doubt would turn to treason, desperation, bitterness, and an offer too tempting to refuse. Arnold made contact with the British, a secret exchange. He would hand over West Point, a key American fortress. In return, money and a place among the British ranks. The deal was set, the betrayal in motion. But then, a mistake. A messenger carrying secret documents was captured. Arnold's plot was exposed, and suddenly, the trusted general became America's most hated traitor. Panic! Arnold fled before he could be caught. He raced to a British warship, his last refuge. Meanwhile, his messenger hanged, his name erased from history. But Arnold, he lived. He fought against the very army he once led. But to the British, he was never one of them. To the Americans, a name spoken only with hatred. Benedict Arnold, a name that would mean only one thing: traitor. Now, let's dive into one of the most shocking betrayals of the 19th century. A betrayal not by a single individual, but by an entire nation. Paris, 1894. A single sheet of paper found in a wastebasket changed everything. A French military document detailing classified artillery secrets, discovered in the hands of the enemy. France was already on edge. Tensions with Germany were high. Patriotism bordered on paranoia, and the military needed a traitor. They found one. Or so they thought. Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish officer in the French army. Brilliant, disciplined, loyal, but to some, an outsider. And when the evidence was flimsy, that didn't matter, because the military had already made up its mind. Dreyfus was arrested, charged with treason, and sentenced to a fate worse than death, a public humiliation, and a one-way ticket to hell. Devil's Island, a lonely cell, scorching heat by day, bone-chilling cold by night, a prisoner, isolated, forgotten, watched. Dreyfus wasn't just imprisoned, he was erased. For months, no letters, no visitors, not even the sound of his own name. His guards, ordered not to speak to him. Even his shackles, bolted to his bed at night. Escape? Impossible. Hope, fading. And back in France, the world moved on, or so it seemed, because in the shadows, a truth was waiting, and soon it would shake the nation to its core. But the truth, it refuses to stay buried. A French officer, Georges Picard, stumbles upon something disturbing, a forged document, a real traitor. And it wasn't Dreyfus. The real spy, Major Ferdinand Valsin Esterhazy. Picard fights to expose the truth. But his superiors? They silence him, punish him, bury the evidence. But the truth, it spreads like wildfire. Soon, France is in turmoil. Protests in the streets. Newspapers divided the nation. One side demanding justice, the other clinging to the lie. And Dreyfus, still rotting away in exile, for a crime he did not commit. But now, the world is watching. The truth is out, but will justice follow? Public pressure mounts. The government can't ignore it anymore. They put Esterhazy on trial. But the verdict? Not guilty. The real traitor walks free. And Dreyfus? Still in chains. The outrage explodes. The famed writer Émile Zola steps in. With a single, blistering headline, "J'accuse!" He lays everything bare. The corruption, the cover-up, the betrayal of justice itself. Zola is tried for libel, but the damage is done. France cannot look away. Another trial is ordered. This time, Dreyfus returns to face his fate. And the verdict? Guilty. Again. The courtroom gasps. But the government, they know the truth. And so, they offer a pardon. Dreyfus is free. But the stain remains. Years later, the case is reopened. And at last, Alfred Dreyfus is fully exonerated. But the scars? They never truly fade. A nation torn, a trust betrayed, and a lesson. That justice delayed is justice denied.